Good evening, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for September 24th, 2022, around 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to talk about this evening, including Tropical Storm Ian and the fact that it could bring some significant impacts to portions of the Florida Peninsula or Panhandle over the next several days. We have a major hurricane on our hands over the next few days, so let's go and jump straight into everything. Taking a look across the tropical Atlantic this evening as the sun sets, we notice that in the Atlantic Basin we have Tropical Storm Ian. This is now south of Jamaica at this point and is moving towards the west and northwest over the next few days. Be kind of cutting it close to the western part of Cuba. Take a look here at the zoomed in visible satellite before the sun sets. We notice that the surface rotation is very visible. However, any discernible low-level circulation is hard to pinpoint this evening. My guess would be that it's probably right around that 15 degrees north-ish line, kind of somewhere in this region, maybe a little bit south of there. But you can clearly see the banding structures this evening, clear banding on either side of this, which means that somewhere in here we have that low-level circulation. And you can kind of see right before the sun sets this evening that those new convective bursts go up over here. So that means to me that maybe our surface center is somewhere within this vicinity. If we look at the recon plane that's been in there from earlier this afternoon, we noticed that we did have multiple different low-level circulations. We had an initial circulation that was here, another circulation here, and the final circulation, which was noted, is right here, closer to 14.5 north. So this will kind of line up within that area of convergence and rotation that we were just talking about and looking at on the satellite imagery. And so this center reformation, again, assuming that if we get any more center reformations further north, this could have a little bit of a track implication over the next couple of days. Now, if we take a look here at Tropical Storm Ian and the forecast track, we do notice that this is expected to move off towards the north and west over the next few days. The tropical storm watch for the island of Jamaica has been canceled as tropical storm conditions are no longer expected, so that is good news. But over the next few days, this is expected to be moving towards the northwest and will rapidly intensify. We do have a hurricane warning in effect for portions of the Cayman Islands at this point as a result of this passing very close to the islands and could bring hurricane conditions within the next 36 hours. After that period of time, though, this is expected to strengthen massively and become a Category 4 hurricane after passing the western tip of Cuba and moving off towards the north and east somewhere near Florida. The end of this track forecast, days 4 and 5, very uncertain, and there's a lot of uncertainty going forth in time. Now, if we look at the overall risk impact for Florida in the southeast U.S., again, this is subject to change, so don't get too hung up on this at the point. But there is a significant risk of impacts from about, kind of the Fort Myers, Cape Coral area northward, kind of curling around into the kind of the Tallahassee, Big Bend region at this point, maybe Mexico Beach area. This is, again, as a result, there's a lot of uncertainty with the overall track forecast. And if there is a storm, let's just say here, moving in that general direction, this is going to pile drive a lot of surge up in this region. And so there's going to be surge impacts irregardless of whether or not this is, over here or whether or not this is over here or over here. Significant surge impacts are likely irregardless because of the way that this is, the concave shape of the coastline. So there is a significant risk all the way down to about the Fort Myers, Cape Coral area. And then that significant risk extends all the way back toward near Tallahassee. Elevated risks surrounding that, basically the entire central and northern part of the peninsula, even portions of southern Georgia and extreme southeastern Alabama, because of the very large uncertainty. And that's precluding any higher risk from being added at this point. Now, looking at the overall forecast guidance here, we'll look at the HWARF forecast first. This is the 18Z run here. This is valid for 11 p.m. this evening. We notice that there's a low-level circulation here based on the HWARF forecast. It is about near 14.5 north at this point. It's about 1440 and 7780. So pretty close to what we've observed from today based on the recon obs. This continues to move north and west here and gets pretty strong even within the next about 18 hours. This is already down to 994 even within about 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. Now, whether or not this happens, I don't really know. Given the recent trends that we've seen, I would tend to believe that the 994 is a little bit by tomorrow. However, this does become a hurricane. Again, you can see the Cayman Islands at this point now. The storm is going to remain pretty, round, and it's going to remain very compact for several days in the Caribbean because there's really no eyewall replacement cycles. There's just nothing to really expand the wind field. However, eventually that wind field does expand as the hurricane matures. This moves into the Gulf of Mexico after passing the western tip of Cuba, and then the track forecast becomes quite uncertain after that point. If you look at the full HWRF run, this is a major hurricane all the way into the Gulf of Mexico and then does make it a powerful hurricane as it crosses the Florida Big Bend region and the Panhandle. If you look at the HMON forecast, it's a little bit different. Again, we don't have that quick consolidation, and this only deepens below 995 by tomorrow evening. So a little bit of a difference there. And then eventually, again, this becomes a hurricane still impacting the western tip of Cuba. I think hurricane impacts are expected there at this particular point. And then this is where the track diverges based on the HWRF and HMON. Now, it is imperative to understand the differences between the models here. The HWRF forecast is loosely based off of the GFS because its initial parameterization and boundary layer conditions are based off of the GFS. So in theory, the HWRF and GFS should have very similar tracks, and indeed that is exactly what happens. The HMON is based off a different parameterization scheme from my understanding, and so it's going to differ from the HWRF. And so what we end up having here is a storm that gets uncomfortably close to Tampa Bay on Wednesday. This is 5 p.m. Wednesday, and this is only about 90 to 100 miles from Tampa Bay proper. And tropical storm conditions extending right along the coast here at this particular point, moving towards the Big Bend region. Now, eventually, this makes landfall as a rapidly weakening hurricane on this particular run and goes on to then just kind of stall and create some flooding issues for portions of Florida, and especially North Florida, because, again, that moisture field is going to be expanding. But these are two very different solutions here. And, again, one of the things that we've been talking about is the evolution of this trough over the Great Lakes and over the Northeast U.S. This will be digging down over the next several days, and this is a look at the GFS 18Z run here. We're looking at the 500 millibar heights and vorticity. So we notice that we've got this trough over here. Now, this is a trough that ended up over here that was over Indiana and the Great Lakes, and this has shifted eastward. We understand that that's likely to happen, but there's some uncertainty whether or not there is a slower trough evolution or whether we get this piece of a trough back here to dig in a second time and pull the storm further north. On this particular run of the GFS, that doesn't happen, and you end up with a system that is pulling, with the trough pulling away and the system slowing down as we start to get a ridge that tries to build in. This is causing northerly flow here and slowing our storm down because of different steering patterns at this point. Now, the ICON forecast is a little bit different here in the fact that, again, this actually crosses the Florida Peninsula, and it's all a result of where our storm ends up, because if our storm is further west, it's going to take a little bit more time to feel this tug from this upper trough here, and it's going to take more time to get to the Florida coastline rather than a storm further north here, and this feels more of a tug in towards the peninsula, and this trough evolution is a little bit slower on the ICON forecast. And so you have a solution that shows a little bit slower of this evolution here from the trough, and so you get a storm that moves through the Central Florida Peninsula. Now, this far west, or this far east, I'm not really sure that we get that far. If we look at the super ensemble blends coming off of 139 different members here, this is the 12Z initializations here, we notice that, again, there's still a wide spread of possibilities here within about 5 days. We have several members that, again, are much tighterly clustered today, sort of, around the central Gulf here at this particular point, kind of the central and eastern Gulf. But the ellipse still spans from portions of northern Yucatan Peninsula all the way through the east coast of Florida at this point. And this uncertainty only grows within 5 days because several members, again, do bring this over the Florida Peninsula and back over to the open waters, while a lot of the members today keep it over water at this point, and even some members now show it getting far enough west that this kind of just meanders for several days at this point. European ensembles here from the 12Z run, again, most of them still bring it over the Florida Peninsula, though there are several members that do kind of recurve it away back towards the west. There's kind of that bend there. And there's some members that do end up further west here, but still seeing a large clustering over the central Florida Peninsula. But the GFS forecast, the GFS evolution of this is much different, with a storm that ends up here in the central Gulf. Now, either way, there is still likely to be some impacts based off of this, especially because of the moisture field being expanded. So again, it is important to kind of just remember that, this cone and these track forecasts here will change over the next 5 days. However, it is important to remember that if you live in this cone of uncertainty, it's always good to be prepared and continue monitoring the forecast, as these will likely change over the next several days. Thankfully, we have a NOAA upper air reconnaissance mission in there right now, and some upper air data should be collected this evening to help the models over the next few days. So that's certainly some good news. Now, my plans right now, of course, I'm located in Orlando, so my plans right now is that we're planning to leave Orlando and then probably jump on and take 75 and some of the other roads, probably up here to maybe closer to near Tallahassee, just south of here, and kind of reanalyze where our storm might be positioned at this point. Again, a track in like this would be a lot worse. Again, a track kind of in like here provides worse impacts for the Florida Big Bend area, Cedar Key, those areas. A track more up here towards like Pensacola and Destin and Panama City, also having some pretty significant storm surge issues, but also would be further away from significant impacts to the peninsula. So again, to some of our equipment, we've got some pressure sensors and we've got some wind sensors as well that we plan to take up. So we're going to have a pretty fun time. It should be a good chase. So if you guys want to follow along, it will be live streamed, so you can always hit the join the channel memberships. That definitely supports me. Patreon, all of that stuff supports me. My mission is to become crowdfunded, so we can do this all the time, and we can have live coverage inside of storms all the time. So if that's something you want to see, make sure you join the channel membership, or join Patreon or whatever. So with that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your evening. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I'll be talking to you guys again some more tomorrow.